Okay, going live. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday. As always, my name is Nate. I am the marketing and community lead for Laterpress, and this is our first Tuesday stream. Streams have previously been only on Friday afternoons from 3 to 4 p.m. Central Time. I am now doubling them up, and they will be Tuesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. Central Time and Fridays 3 to 4 p.m. So the Friday slot is going to stay how it is. But now we're going to have a bonus on Tuesdays as well because I wanted to spend some more time working on this and kind of try to work through the book faster live with the end goal of having the finished book available for people to read as an example of here is what is possible in the collaboration of your own writing skills and talent and thoughts and ideas and using Laterpress story tools for assistance. So that's kind of the goal we're running towards here is to get the book finished, published, and readable by everybody who wants to check it out. So that's what we're going to be working on for the bulk of our stream today. But there is one special feature I wanted to start by highlighting that is not yet available. This is coming soon. So with software development, I can't give you any ETA on things. There are some things we need to fix and things that don't quite work how I want them to, which you are going to see as a part of this stream. So like I said, what I am about to show you is work in progress, not final, but something to get you hyped for what's coming. So you'll note here, this is our staging environment. This is not the public version of Laterpress that everybody has access to. We have a new icon over here in the corner. I'm going to zoom in really tight so you can see this. This is a microphone icon. And what we have done is we've taken existing functionality and where the microphone icon previously existed in the notes feature here to speak and dictate notes. It now exists to allow folks to dictate chapters directly into the editor. So that's what I'm going to be showing off here. Samuel will be watching again after you get off work. Excellent. Always appreciate you tuning in. And that's the joy of replays being available too, is that folks can swing by whenever works for them. So I'm hoping this will work live on stream. I had a little bit of concern that by trying to stream and dictate at the same time, my computer would fight over which source is getting the microphone audio. So I actually have my audio running to two different microphones right now. My webcam microphone is picking up my audio for the stream, and I have a separate mic that is going to be feeding into dictation here. I'm not the greatest at extemporaneous dictation, so for the sake of a tech demo and showing this off, I'm going to read the first chapter of the first page of my own book, so that I have some samples text to work with, and we can show off how this dictates. If anyone disturbs my peace today, I'll murder them. Serena held a cup of tea under her nose, savoring the scents of lemon and lavender. On the table before her, she held open the pages of the only novel in town she hadn't read yet. The tension between her shoulder blades eased as she sipped her drink. Songbirds sang to each other as a gentle breeze ruffled the leaves. Solitude and quiet, at last. Serena! Serena! The all-too-familiar voice came from the opposite end of the village's central courtyard. Jonah. Of course. She downed the rest of her tea in one long swallow, then slammed the cup down with enough force to snap the handle off in her hand. Whoops. She placed a couple of coins on the table to cover replacement costs. It wouldn't be the first time she'd broken one in Jonah-induced frustration, and she wanted to stay in the tavern keeper's good graces. She imagined herself strapping Jonah to a litter, dragging him into the woods and leaving him for wolves, or tying him up and leaving him dangling over crocodile infested waters. Why did it always have to be her? Couldn't he just once let her delegate the task to another hunter? No use delaying the inevitable. What non existent beast would she be contractually obligated to hunt today? Over here, Jonah. She lifted an arm in a lazy wave. Jonah took a seat across from her, oblivious to both the shattered cup and her barely restrained temper. He fidgeted, stood and danced back and forth like he had to relieve himself, ran his hands through his hair, sat back down and bounced his leg up and down. Use your words, Serena said. What is it this time? And now what you'll see is when I clicked the microphone icon there, this bar appeared in the center of the screen to let folks know it's recording. And now, boom, just like that, all of the text. And you'll note here, this is why one of the things that is a work in progress about this is it transcribes everything, but it does it as one big brick of text. And so if you're trying to dictate, an entire chapter, this can be a lot of manual formatting to have to deal with it. And so what we're working on for the second half of this, beyond just having the text transcribed that you say, I'll show, I have a stopgap prompt for this right now, which is transcription corrections, which is designed to take the text and break it up into proper paragraphs, add in like quotation marks and everything like that. And so now replace. And so now here is the text I dictated, cleaned up into paragraph breaks with some dialogue tags in there, and there'd still be maybe a tiny bit of cleanup left to get everything exactly how you want it. Especially with me writing fantasy, it can misspell some of my fantasy words and concepts, but what we're working towards here is that it'll be a two-step process where you dictate your text. The AI then transcribes what you said, and then which would be that block of text at the beginning, and then automatically runs it through a prompt to add dialogue tags and paragraph breaks and clean things up into a more readable format like this, and then deposits it into the chapter. And so using that feature, it would be possible to dictate entire chapters directly into the book. And then either if you're really good at dictation and can dictate really clean, then, publish things almost right away. Otherwise, just do a cleanup pass to fix things and, you're ready to go. Export the text to somewhere else for publishing, publish directly, however you want to do it. That's another way to, write and publish text. So I have been trying to practice more with dictation and get that more into my process as like a way to very quickly slap down at least a good chunk of a chapter, the text that I have the highest degree of confidence in and can very quickly speak out, and then get in to dig in deeper for the rest of it. So that is dictation, which is coming soon. I'm very excited about it, and that's why I wanted to show that off, because this is very very accurate to what I just read. So if you can dictate, the AI is going to help get all that transcribed and on the page for you very quickly. And these are my words. The prompts I was using for cleanup: do not add anything except dialogue tags and basic formatting, paragraph breaks for readability. It's not going to take what you say and then add stuff. So that is a very, very fun coming soon attraction. Anyway, with the coming attractions covered, so let's pick up where we left off on editing the book. So for anybody who is jumping into this video for the first time, we are working on an urban fantasy romantic comedy about two people who are matched up through a magical dating app, and their first date goes absolutely horrible, total crash and burn. It's a nightmare. They go their separate ways, both of them thinking they never want to see the other person again, only to find themselves trapped in a time loop engineered by the dating app, who will not let them leave until they realize that the two of them are, in fact, a perfect match for each other. So, the dating app kind of functions as a pseudo-antagonist in this book, um, because it's going to be the one engineering all of the difficulties that our protagonists go through. Except that I didn't want this to be like a tech is bad story or an AI bad story. The app is fundamentally correct that these two people are a good match for each other, but they both have emotional baggage that they have to unpack to come to the realization that the other person is indeed a good match. Because in different ways, neither one of them is actually ready for love, but they're matching anyway. And so this is kind of a grand, the school of hard knocks, getting ready for love type story. So we have been working on chapter 3, which is, at this point in the story, Eddie, the male protagonist, has decided that he is going to sign up for the CUPID app, which is a $5,000 one-time fee. So it is not cheap, but the draw is that the app's success rate is greater than 90% at matching people for long-term success, and it is a money-back guarantee for the people it cannot find a match for. So Eddie decides, all right, fine, I'll give it a shot, especially because one of his friends got the app, got matched up, is looking to propose to his girlfriend, and is deliriously happy. So in this current chapter, we spent some time working on this in the last episode and saw some issues related to kind of vague or ambiguous prompting, and how in my scene cards I did not make my initial intent clear enough. So you can see a few additions here that I added into this before generating text again. Everything Cupid says should be written as dialogue. The app is capable of speech, because the original versions of this, it treated Eddie like too much like a chat bot, or the application like too much of clicking through an online form. And that was just a boring and uninteresting chapter to read, because who finds filling out an online form exciting? How do you turn that into something that anybody wants to read? So it was not a good chapter because of how it was structurally set up. And that was on me not articulating the idea clearly enough. So it needed to hit the reset button to be more specific about the design intent of the scene and the dynamics on how things needed to work. And I think there may still be more work needed to do to go into the wiki, for example, and in character cards. The AI uses what's in the character cards for context about who these characters are. So I think I'm not going to do it at the moment, but the next time that we're working on a scene with Cupid, there needs to be more information in here about its, not just what it is, but about its personality as well, to inform the direction on how its dialogue gets written. Because right now, this is mostly talking about the bare bones of what it is, and a little bit about what it is, mental and skills, but not much about personality. Um, just besides manipulative, benevolent certainty, playful, smug, relentless. I think we can go a little bit deeper with it there. But so for now, in the last episode, we worked through some of the chapter. So you'll see in here where I bolded certain things that is text that as an editor I would correct or change. And I put in here some notes for myself in revision, for example. Replace these lines with a joke that shows some personality. Again, a note for myself, insert some quip from Eddie about how Cupid is able to obtain all his personal information so fast, because as part of the review process, the dating app can pull his social media history, his bank records, job details. It'd be like the FBI deciding they need to pull together a dossier on you and having all of your information in about 30 seconds. It's like that, but for a consumer dating app. And so that's why I think Eddie should have some sort of quip in there about that. And we're now working through the questions. And this chapter, after it was originally written as one guy filling out a form, had it rewritten to be more of a dialogue between Eddie and the app Cupid. So we're going through that. And then I left myself a big note here. This is where we stopped. So if you've watched the last episode in this series, we're caught up to here. And then we will keep going, reading through the chapter. So I'm zooming in to make the text as big as possible for you viewing at home. Okay. I might actually go back and reread a couple paragraphs just to set us up for where we're at. Question 43. What do you do when you realize you care about someone more than they care about you? Eddie pushed back from the desk. The chair rolled a few inches on the hardwood, and he sat there, arms loose at his sides, phone ringing at inappropriate times. Spam telemarketer. Sorry, folks. Eddie pushed back from his desk. The chair rolled a few inches on the hardwood, and he sat there, arms loose at his sides, staring at the ceiling. There was a hairline crack on the plaster that he'd been meaning to patch for 6 months. It looked like a river on a map, branching and thinning towards the corner of the room. And so I don't know that I'm going to change anything about this, but I'm highlighting this line to make a point that when you're working with AI to help write text or generate a rough draft that you're going to edit and revise, pattern recognition is important, and seeing things that the AI likes to give you over time. And one thing I have noticed, at least with this story specifically, is that if a character has uncertainties, any kind of neurotic habit, it makes it their personality for everything. And so it likes to have incompetent male protagonist syndrome, which drives me nuts. Like the original version of this chapter had his office was in complete disarray. He's a slob. There's crap everywhere. And I'm like, no, Eddie is not a slob. This needs to be fixed. So, pay attention to certain details that where it might try to enforce its own narrative objectives, not your sense of what is correct for a character. And if it's just a single sentence like this, it could be easy to rewrite. It could be easy to delete, but just keep an eye out for those sorts of things. He could feel Cupid waiting, not impatiently. The app had a quality of attention that reminded him uncomfortably of the way he sat with his own clients, patient, present, willing to let the silence do the work. I try harder, he said. The words came out plain and unvarnished, and he let them stand. He could have said, I try to understand what they need, which was the version of himself he was working towards, the aspirational Eddie, the one who'd read the books and done some of the exercises that he could talk about emotional regulation at a bar without clearing the table. But Cupid had said honest, and the honest answer was that when he felt someone slipping away, his first and deepest instinct was to grip tighter, to be more, to fill every silence with proof that he was worth keeping. So the reason I have bolded this paragraph is that AI does not tend to, on first pass, write much for inner monologue unless you specifically ask for it. I get a lot of the basic, here's what people did, here's what people said, but not really how anybody is thinking about it or responding to it, which is in one way good because that is kind of where we can insert ourselves as authors and people who understand the human condition and really infuse the books with more character and personality. But because a book can feel very vanilla and dry, lacking any kind of deep character perspective. But when you do prompt for it to have deeper uh, internal monologue and more thought from the characters, it can have a propensity to overwrite it, which is why I bolded this paragraph here, because I don't disagree with any of the points that it's necessarily trying to make about Eddie's character, but I think the paragraph is overly long and I can make the same points in a more succinct fashion. So that is a spot where I would highlight that for myself and say, okay, I need to come back and I can condense this down. And so now we can continue into new stuff. Thank you, Cupid said. Just that. No commentary, no interesting, no data point about what his answer correlated with. Eddie found the restraint almost unbearable. And one here's the end of again on pattern recognition. The AI loves the rule of three. No commentary, that's one. No interesting, that's two. No data point about what his answer correlated with, that's three. I don't hate the rule of three in general, but it is something that one needs to be selective about. In this case, I would probably just straight up delete that sentence and just leave it as thank you, Cupid said. Eddie found the restraint almost unbearable. Section 4 was about love languages, which he'd expected, and he moved through it with something like relief. Familiar territory, well-trodden ground. He talked about quality time, about how presence was the thing he valued most, about how he'd rather have someone's full attention for an hour than their partial attention for a day. He sounded good saying it. He knew he sounded good saying it. Again, I don't like that. So I'm going to bold that. Doesn't quite match the way I have his personality in mind. But it's kind of skimming through things here a little bit because understandably we don't want this chapter to be 8,000 words of Q&A. Things do need to zip a little bit along, and so we need to create the impression that this is a long, arduous process without it being a long, arduous process for readers to get through. Section 5 was about family dynamics, which he hadn't expected, and the relief evaporated. Cupid wanted to know about his parents' relationship, and he talked about his mother's warmth and his father's distance, about the way love in his household had always been demonstrated through effort, meals cooked, bills paid, school forms signed, but rarely spoken aloud. He talked about his older sister who'd inherited their father's reserve and married a man exactly like him, and how Eddie decided early that he would be different and that he would say the thing always, even if it cost him. And has it cost you? Cupid asked. Now I'm going to insert a note to myself here. This is a spot to dig deeper and be more specific about these family dynamics. Because the AI is painting it in very broad strokes, and I'd like to take it from general to a little bit more specific. I'm not going to bother bolding all of that, but just as a note for myself that we're on the right track, but we can take that a little further. What is it and has it cost you? Cupid asked. Eddie was quiet for a moment. Sometimes the people I say it aren't ready to hear it, and I say it anyway, so yeah, it's cost me. I'm missing the connection here. He talked about his older sister. Oh, Eddie decided early on that he would be different and that he would say the thing even if it cost him. I do need to bold that for that transition. He could hear himself becoming careful, could feel the pull to frame each answer in the most favorable light, not lying exactly, but curating. Nope, just leave it there. Answer in the most favorable light, softening an edge here, adding a qualifier there, because this accomplishes what the bit I deleted did. So that extra part was a redundancy. Making himself sound like someone who had processed his childhood, rather than someone who was still, on some level, running the same play his father never ran over and over, hoping that volume could substitute for the thing he'd never been taught. Um, Again, I think there's better ways to phrase this, but we can run with that as a direction. The challenge with this is that both of these protagonists kind of work in therapy spaces. So they're going to think in therapy speak in ways that I would generally find annoying. So the balancing act that I have to navigate while I am editing this text is how much therapy speak is included because it is legitimate to how these characters think, who they are, and their careers, and how much of it is just obnoxious. So it's one of those things where you have to, I think you need to be strategic. I need to be strategic with it and not overdo it, but it does need to be there. Question 89, Cupid said. When you imagine your ideal partner, do you picture a specific person or a feeling? A feeling, Eddie said immediately, then before he could stop himself, but I know them when I met them. Question 90. How do you know? He didn't have an answer for that, not a real one. He had a conviction, bone deep and irrational, that a recognition would strike him like a bell, that he'd just look at someone and the frequency would match and he'd just know. It was the most romantic thing he believed and also probably the most naive, and he was aware that saying it out loud to a matchmaking algorithm that had just audited his tax returns was not going to make him sound like a serious person. So we're calling back to earlier details in the chapter here about the fact that it's looked over his tax returns and all of that. Um, Again, with these kind of callbacks, they're not automatically always wrong, but they fall under the pick your spots and be selective about them. And I think that's one that I would massage. And I think for today's stream, I'm just going to be going through and looking at generated text and offering my editorial critique about it. And in the Friday stream, we will dig deeper in to, okay, here's the specific block of text. Now here's how I would rewrite it, or use AI to generate a different pass that's closer to my desires and refine from there. Because it's the back and forth. It's what I tell folks interacting with AI and using AI is that the vast majority of your time working with the tools is actually editing the output. It's auditing it. It's making sure it aligns with your intended direction for the story, because it can generate text so fast, and we need to think about it, know what the story is that we're trying to tell, and make sure that things match our quality standards and are the way we want things before publishing them. And especially, the way I'm doing this live on stream, reviewing the text, highlighting things, and explaining my rationale for every decision I make. That is going to slow up the process considerably. So using the tools to generate text, go through the process, that could be very bang, bang, bang. And then the real work begins on digging through, editing, revising, all of that. So I'm going to get rid of the assertion that accomplishes nothing. Actually, I should not have done that now that I realized that that was the answer. And this paragraph was him thinking. How would you know that? I just would. Romantic, Cupid said, also unfalsifiable, but will allow it. Eddie almost smiled. Almost. Section 6 opened with a warning, read aloud in Cupid's most measured tone. The following questions are designed to assess relational self-awareness. There are no right answers, but there are honest ones. I can tell the difference. This is one annoying habit that it has with how it's writing Cupid, is there's been multiple times where it said, like, I'll know if you're lying, I can tell the difference, I can blah, blah, blah. And that is one note to the dialogue. So now when I'm seeing it now, I'm starting to highlight that stuff as a call to attention to myself to, be mindful of that, that I need to tweak those a little bit. Question 112. Do you believe you are easy to love? Eddie's hands, which had been resting on his thighs, went still. The pen sat untouched on the desk. The golden glow of the screen cast soft light across his knuckles, and he stared at them as if the answer might be written there. His first instinct was yes, of course yes. He was warm, he was attentive, he showed up, he tried. He was the guy who remembered your coffee order and texted back immediately and planned the date and followed up after the date and was told more than once that it was too much, that he was too much. He's kind of the clingy, we'll just call him the clingy type here for the moment. I think I'm worth loving, he said slowly. Whether I make it easy is a different question. He sat with the sentence after it left him. It felt like the truest thing he'd said all night, not performed, not polished, just accurate. And here again, 1, 2, 3. So I call those nearly 100% of the time because it's such a pattern. So I think here I would cut this down to, it felt like the truest thing he'd said all night. He wasn't sure he liked how it sounded. Question 113. What are you most afraid your partner will eventually discover about you? The room felt smaller. Eddie rubbed his face with both hands, pressing his palms against his eyes until he saw spots. When he dropped his hands, the screen was still glowing, still waiting, still patient. Again, here's 3. 1, 2, 3. In a way that made him feel like he was sitting across from something that had all the time in the world and knew exactly how to use it. So here again, we're substituting. Okay, now it's going to pivot to inner thoughts here, but we have an entire paragraph that is just gesturing, and doesn't really add much. So when we're thinking about what are you most afraid your partner will eventually discover about you, let's pretend this paragraph doesn't exist for a minute. He thought about Adeline, about the letters she'd written and never sent, the decades of feeling that had calcified into regret. Adeline is a client that he's been working with to help her through her grief. He thought about how he'd sat with her ghost and felt with absolute certainty that he would never let that happen to him, and that he would always say the thing, send the letter, make the call. And he thought about how that certainly had driven him to chase every connection at full speed, to treat every first date like it might be the last chance, to compress entire relationships into single evenings, because somewhere underneath all of that passion and the eloquence and the showing up was a voice that whispered, if you slow down, they'll leave. If you give them room, they'll use it to go. So this is, again, not exactly how I would phrase it, but we're in the right track. But one thing I would have to do on a deeper dive, re-auditing the whole chapter and editing things, is we've already kind of established that this is his modus operandi of blasting into things full speed. So this chapter or this paragraph feels a little bit redundant to what has come before, and this one adds nothing whatsoever. So writer Nate would go, this is a spot to make a joke about something inappropriate. I can't talk and type at the same time, but it doesn't matter. These are just notes for me. This is a spot to make a joke about something inappropriate from his past. Highlight character trait in an amusing way. So that's probably how I would respond to that. I'm going to leave this alone for the moment, but because I might chop this down and still use chunks of this, but I could also potentially cut the whole thing because a lot of this I think has been established already, and then just have it go from what are you most afraid that your partner would discover about you? Eddie in his own head thinking something inappropriate, and then actually answering that the urgency isn't passion, he said, it's panic. The words landed in the quiet of his apartment like a stone dropped into still water. Too many metaphors. He heard, and nothing wrong with this, but this isn't my writing style, so we're going to adjust that a little bit. He heard them ripple outward, heard the echo of them against the walls of his small office, and felt the immediate, desperate urge to explain, to contextualize, to soften, to follow up with, but I'm working on it, or it's not as bad as it sounds. His mouth opened, he closed it, he let the answer stand. Again, to contextualize, to soften, to follow up with. Uh, it's three things again. I'm going to cut all of that. Noted, Cupid said, and for once the word didn't sound smug. It sounded almost gentle, like something being held carefully. Section 7 was shorter. Practical questions about scheduling, geography, deal breakers. Eddie answered them on autopilot, his voice steady but distant, his brain still stuck. 3 questions back, still sitting with the sentence he'd spoken and the fact that he'd let it stand. We can leave that at his brain still stuck 3 questions back. He talked about his availability and his neighborhood and his feelings about long distance without really hearing himself, the way you drove a familiar route and arrived without remembering the turns. That is a metaphor that I can actually I can stand behind. Here for deal breakers, practical questions about scheduling, geography, and deal breakers. I'm going to bold deal breakers as a reminder for myself because I think that's a good detail to latch onto. Maybe instead of leaving it in a summary, we actually give Eddie list some of Eddie's deal breakers here, because I could use that as setup for the actual first date that perhaps Tessa displays some of his deal breakers just because of how she's behaving in the first date. And as they get to know each other, he'd realize that what he's perceiving as a deal breaker is just miscommunication or misunderstanding or Tessa kind of projecting what she thinks Eddie wants to see instead of what she actually is. So I'm going to highlight that as a good anchor point to attach some more information to as we revise. The last question came without fanfare. Is there anything else you'd like your match to know about you? Eddie sat with it for a long time. He could hear the transit ward outside cycling through its evening frequency. This is another thing. It loves wards. It just throws ward out as a catch-all term for everything in fantasy. His water glass was empty. The protein wrapper in the wastebasket had not improved with age. We're calling back to other details. We don't need any of this extraneous detail. Eddie sat with it for a long time. He thought about all the things he could say, the impressive things, the charming things. Again, 1, 2, 3. They would make someone swipe right or lean in or agree to a second date. He had a whole arsenal of those. All right, I'm not going to immediately fix this one, but I am going to bold that as a reminder. He'd built it over the years, honed it through practice, deployed it with the precision. Oh, wait, here's another one. 2, 3. Deployed it with the precision of someone who understood that first impressions were everything and second chances were rare. I'm working on being the kind of person who doesn't need to say everything at once, he said. He let the silence after it breathe. The screen went white, then gold. The animated arrow reappeared, spinning once before dissolving into a clean, simple message. Thank you for completing our new client intake, Cupid said, its voice warm and final, like a door closing softly. As I revise this, I'm going to punch up Cupid's dialogue to make it a little more sarcastic, maybe a little bit more playfully confrontational. So its voice being warm and final. I wouldn't say it like a door closing softly. It would be like something about how that compares to how it has been behaving throughout the rest of this conversation to highlight the difference in how that's going. A meeting has been scheduled for you with Cleo at Aphrodite Inc. headquarters tomorrow at 9 a.m. A pause, then with just a flicker of its old edge. Don't be late. The screen dimmed to a standby glow. Eddie sat in his chair motionless, staring at the laptop like it had performed surgery on him without anesthesia. His shoulders ached. His jaw was sore from clenching. 1, 2. He felt hollowed out and rearranged like someone had opened every drawer in his chest, rifled through the contents, and put everything back in a slightly different order. 3. Also, this, I feel, should better connect to this. We're mixing two different metaphors. So I would pick one here and extend it. Do we go, it's surgery without anesthesia pain? Or do we go with kind of the home invasion, somebody's rifling through my stuff sense of violation? But I would unify those. He closed the laptop. He leaned back. The chair creaked again, the same creak, reliable and unchangeable. He sat there for another minute, alone in his small office in his small apartment in the vast and indifferent city of Horizon, and tried to convince himself that what he'd just done was brave and not just expensive. He couldn't quite get there, but he didn't take it back. So that's extraneous detail to me. And this is kind of it trying to put a bow on things, where I think we can come up with a punchier end of the chapter than that. So if we zoom out here, you can kind of see how much I marked up the chapter with different things that I would edit or revise going through. that I either bolded or highlighted or underlined. So you can see there's a fair amount that sticks, but there's also a fair amount that would need editing. Okay, and moving on, we won't get through this chapter in the last 15 minutes, but I think we can start reading it and marking up text. And then on Friday, we'll circle back to chapter 3. And I'm going to use that as another stream to dig into actually editing with AI tools. We'll have AI try to rewrite some of these. I will rewrite some other lines, and I'll show kind of the editing and revision process with the tools. I'm trying to strike a balance between, a number of streams where we're revising plot beats or scene cards and generating initial text and showing that part of the process as one item, as a second item, going through and marking up the text, and then as a third item, actually implementing changes, improvements, and fixes. Because those are I see those as the three elements of the process. So I do want to make that sure that all three of them are represented as part of our streaming series here. All right, so chapter 4, we just finished Eddie filling out the intake form, and now it would be the next morning, and he's going to CUPID Incorporated. And I wanted this chapter in here as a little bit of world building to show the company behind the app, to help set the stage a little bit more for the world that these characters inhabit, how this app works, how it behaves, to kind of set things up for the chaos that will come in the aftermath of the bad first date. So the scene card that we were working from here is the morning after Cupid's intake forms. Eddie arrives at Aphrodite Incorporated headquarters, slightly overdressed and carrying a coffee he bought to seem casual. The building is sleek and imposing, part tech campus, part temple, with rose gold accents, living walls of flowering vines, and a lobby humming with faint ambient magic. Cleo, his compatibility interviewer, meets him with a warm handshake and an easy smile. Before heading to her office, Cleo walks him through headquarters. The tour is casual but strategic. She guides him past a wall of success stories, framed photos of beaming couples, and drops Cupid's statistics with practiced ease. Over 90% of matches result in lasting partnerships, the highest satisfaction rate in Horizon's history. She tells Eddie the rigorous screening is exactly why results are extraordinary. Eddie nods along, genuinely impressed, though a small part of him wonders whether the tour is a charm offensive to keep him from asking questions. In a sunlit office, Cleo asks about his work first, and he lights up, describing helping spirits find closure with passion and eloquence. But when she pivots to what he's looking for in a partner, his demeanor shifts. His answers become somewhat polished, rehearsed, almost like a pitch. He talks about wanting someone who matches my energy and a partner who isn't afraid of depth. Cleo nods, her pen slows. She walks him back to the lobby, telling him his match is being processed. Eddie steps into the bright horizon morning, feeling oddly exposed and unsettled, though he can't quite name why. So, reading back on my prior work, we'll see how it handles this back portion of things, because I don't want the conversation with Cleo to feel like too much of a retread of the application with Cupid. So that is one section where I'm to be very attentive to the questions that Cleo asks, and I might micromanage revisions with that more, because it was not specific and very general about how this conversation goes. That those two conversations need to feel distinct. So we'll see how things go here. But anyway, for the final 10 minutes, we'll start reading through the chapter and see what we like and what we would edit in the text here. The suit was too much. Eddie knew it the moment he caught his reflection in the lobby doors of Aphrodite Inc. Charcoal wool, peak lapels, a shirt he'd worn pressed specifically for this meeting. 1, 2, 3. Charcoal wool, 1. Peak lapels, 2. A shirt he'd pressed specifically for this meeting, 3. Again, pattern recognition. Keep an eye out for where it does that. Everyone else flowing through the entrance were the studied casualness of people who worked in tech, soft knits, clean sneakers, lanyards with holographic ID badges swinging against their chest. Soft knits, clean sneakers, lanyards with holographic ID badges. Again, it did the 3. He looked like he was here to close a merger. He didn't care. He looked good. So we're going to start by revising that next time or when we get there. He adjusted his grip on the coffee cup. The coffee was a prop, really. He'd bought it from a cart 2 blocks away, not because he wanted it, but because walking into a building empty-handed felt like showing up to a party without a gift. Something to hold, something to do with his hands. The cup was already lukewarm and he hadn't taken a single sip. All right, I think we can prune this easy. The Cuppy cup was a prop, really. He bought it from a cart 2 blocks away. Oops, I have caps lock on. Because he needed something to do with his hands. The cup was already lukewarm and he hadn't taken a single sip. The headquarters of Aphrodite Inc. occupied a full city block at the edge of Horizon's midline district, where the altitude made the morning light hit everything at a sharper angle. The building was enormous and it wanted you to know it. Glass and steel, sure, but the kind of glass that didn't show fingerprints, and the kind of steel that had been polished until it looked like liquid silver. Very minor tweaks needed there. Living walls of flowering jasmine and climbing roses covered the entire facade, not growing wild, but arranged in precise geometric patterns, every bloom at the exact same stage of opening, maintained by enchantments that probably cost more per month than Aunt Eddie's annual rent. I think we can establish the opulence of this just through the descriptions alone without needing to uh, be so overt about mentioning costs. Rose gold accents traced every window frame and structural beam, and the plaza out front was paved in stone so clean it looked like no one had ever actually walked on it. Again, I bet I can come up with a jazzier way of saying that same thing. There was a valet stand. There was a juice bar with a line out the door. Okay, here's 1, valet stand. 2, juice bar. 3, there's a fountain shaped like an arrow that somehow made water flow upward. This company was making obscene amounts of money, and it decided the best use of that money was making sure you understood exactly how much of it there was. Again, I think we can establish that this company is rolling in the dough without being so overt about it. I might leave this line here too, especially because it's here. $5,000 suddenly felt less like a premium and more like a cover charge. And I'm going to get rid of the juice bar. Just leave the valet stand and the fountain as, again, signals of opulence. Eddie pushed through the revolving door and walked into the lobby. 3 stories of open atrium. The ceiling was a lattice of glass panels that turned the mountain sunlight gold. More living walls, orchids, trailing ferns, flowers he didn't have names for. Again, that's there to be rule of 3. I could probably flesh these out and cut that. Climbing every vertical surface and releasing a scent that was sweet and faintly narcotic. I like this, the faintly narcotic bit. I would want to play into that detail even more in revision. So I think that's a good idea and something I would build on. The floor was pale marble veined with actual gold or something close enough that the distinction didn't matter, and his dress shoes clicked against it with each step. A water feature burbled somewhere out of sight. The furniture in the waiting area was the kind of minimalist design where each piece probably cost as much as a used car. Again, it's hammering the opulence home in a way that, well, I'm not going to try to edit this at the moment. I'm just going to highlight this. It's browbeating us with the fact that all of this is expensive, and I think the descriptions can convey that. Strong descriptions can convey that on their own. I mean, if I tell you that somebody has a bathroom where their toilet is gold, and all of their bathroom features are gold, and their banisters are made of pure platinum, and other rare earth metals or something, you don't need me to tell you they're rich, right? So we're going to let the descriptions do the talking for us and cut out the heavy-handed lines that kind of insult the reader's intelligence about, hey, this company has money. And beneath all of it, beneath the hum of conversation and the soft music and the perfectly regulated temperature, there was something else. A low vibration that pressed against his sternum like a second heartbeat. Magic. Not subtle exactly, but restrained, controlled. The kind of enchantment that said we could do more, but we don't really need to. None of that means anything to me. I don't know what to do with that, so we're going to cut that. A woman was already walking toward him from behind the reception desk, hand extended, smile in place, before she was close enough for it to matter. I can do better. Eddie, I'm Cleo. Welcome to Aphrodite. Her handshake was warm and precisely calibrated, firm enough to convey competence, brief enough to keep things professional. She was maybe 40 with dark hair pulled back in a low twist and an expression of friendly authority that she wore as naturally as her clothes. Her outfit split the difference between therapist and tech executive: a cream blouse, tailored trousers, a single gold bracelet that caught the light when she moved her hand. The bracelet alone, look again, here we are, heavy-handed on costs. The bracelet alone looked like it cost more than everything Eddie was wearing combined. No, bad AI, bad. Psst, psst, psst. We are letting our descriptions speak for themselves. Okay. Thanks for coming in. How was the commute? Not bad. I took the Ridgeline tram. He lifted the coffee cup slightly as if it explained something, grabbed this on the way. Smart, our coffee here is terrible. Don't tell anyone I said that. She winked, practiced disarming, and gestured towards a corridor branch off the main lobby. How about, no, we just leave it. She winked and gestured toward a corridor that branched off the main lobby. Before we sit down, let me show you around a little, give you the lay of the land. And that's the start of the tour. So we're going to go, this is where we stopped on May 19th stream, so that I have my stopping point here. So When we come back to this on Friday, we will dig through chapter 3, going through all of the things that were marked up here, and a mixture of using AI editing tools to take another crack at fixing things, as well as using some of my own writing skills to improve things. And I don't know that we'll get through the whole chapter in an hour stream, because I am explaining my thought process behind everything instead of just doing things. But then, so that'll be Friday. Then next Tuesday, I'll probably get through this chapter in terms of editing and revising it. But I am going to start doing some more of the work on this off stream to keep things going faster, because we are not yet even at the meet cute and that disastrous first date. So we've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 full plot beats that we have not started yet. And so I'm trying to mix between depth of really showing my thought process and everything, and wanting to keep things moving so that we're not still working on this book 6 months from now. So anyway, that is going to wrap things up for the stream for today. Appreciate folks tuning in, and we will be back in action on Friday. But have a good evening, everybody.